see like if it is genetic, or is it just kind of like you go based off of like family history?
Family history. Usually the medical workup, they'll do family history. There are a few different genetic links that we know now are linked with high LDL levels. And I don't think we're really doing panels where we're looking for those specific genes yet. There might be some places that are starting to do that panel where they can look, okay, do you have the genes that will predispose, I can't say that word, predispose, I'm trying to add extra syllables on there, predispose you to having high cholesterol. A lot of times they'll just look at family history and then your actual lifestyle.
And like,
Figure it out.
What classifies that would be like if your family, if there is like high blood pressure, if there is like that,
Yep.
that runs in your family.
Yep. They'll ask about heart disease, heart attack, stroke, atherosclerosis, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. All of those could put somebody at an increased risk for having those conditions themselves. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So steroid. These are steroids. We mentioned these before. An example of estradiol and testosterone. They actually come specifically from the cholesterol molecule. So I never drew up the molecule before because I wanted to emphasize the lipoproteins, LDL and HDL, but they carry cholesterol. They carry around the fat molecules and the cholesterol molecules. It's a 4-ring structure. Hydrocarbon, these are all carbons, carbon, carbon. Whenever you see points like that, those all represent carbon. And then it's got a hydrocarbon chain or tail coming off the end. That is in the fat category. It is a lipid. There's no sugar structure to it. There's not a lot of charge to it. It's mostly a hard hydrocarbon ring structure. Therefore, it is a fat. It's a lipid. So we would say it's non-polar. It's not going to go with water. So the actual molecular structure of cholesterol is right there. Enzymes in your bodies convert cholesterol into estrogen or testosterone, or both. Actually, females have testosterone and males have estrogen. We all have the same. Females have a higher ratio of estrogen to testosterone. Males have a higher ratio of testosterone to estrogen. But they're both made, and actually these can be converted back and forth. We can convert testosterone into estrogen and vice versa. So there are specific enzymes that can actually convert these back and forth. All right, so cholesterol synthesized by your liver. Dietary consumption really doesn't have a big effect. Hold on just a second. Dietary consumption of cholesterol does not have a big effect. Your liver is the one that's making cholesterol, okay, so that you can use the cholesterol to make key hormones that your body needs. We also have cholesterol, and I didn't mention this. We have cholesterol inserted into our plasma membrane. Little ring structure. I'm just going to do it real kind of cheesy here. Little cholesterol is interspersed in your plasma membrane of all your cells. It helps to add sort of stability and fluidity to the membrane. And so it's a part of the architecture of your plasma membrane. So you need cholesterol and your liver to make cholesterol because it's part of your plasma membranes, helps with the fluidity and architecture of your plasma membrane. And you also need it because you have key steroids that come from cholesterol. They are made from cholesterol. So cholesterol is in the membrane of all of your cells, plays key roles in sort of the mechanics of the membrane and stability of the membrane. It's really, really important. So cholesterol, people go, oh my God, cholesterol's so bad. It's not really the cholesterol that's bad. Your liver is actually having the enzymes it needs to make cholesterol so that we can turn that cholesterol, put it into cell membranes of your body, and also convert it into key hormones, okay? It's when you have too many fats, too many triglycerides, and excess cholesterol in the diet that your LDLs start packing up with them and transporting them everywhere. But you need cholesterol. Okay, cholesterol is really important for a lot of these basic functions. Cell membranes making testosterone and estrogen. So the sex steroids and a lot of other hormones we're going to look at are all made from cholesterol in your body. Specifically in your gonads, there's enzymes that will convert cholesterol into T or E, testosterone or estrogen. Vitamin D is another steroid. And notice it has a ring structure with a hydrocarbon chain. Ring structure, hydrocarbon chain. It's not a sugar. It's not anything else we've looked at. It's a type of lipid or a fat, okay? Vitamin D receptors are found all throughout your body. Your brain, your heart, your muscles, your immune cells, your white blood cells. You've got vitamin D receptors everywhere. Now, receptors are what allow you to respond to certain key hormones and things floating around in your body. So here's a little receptor. This is, say, just a key hormone that is going to trigger a response inside of the cell. You need these receptors to be able to detect those different vitamins or hormones or signaling factors. So you've got vitamin D receptors all throughout your body. Your skin, your dermis, your skin actually synthesizes vitamin D with UV sun exposure. So you can go outside between the hours of, 11 and 4, 11 and 5. Not too long, because that is kind of peak UV light time. But a few minutes a day of just natural light or UV light will help your dermis actually start making vitamin D, okay? So vitamin D is really important because it is involved in allowing your gut, your small intestine, to absorb calcium, so you get enough calcium into your system, into your blood, and enough calcium into your bones. It's also involved in helping reduce cancer risk, so vitamin D levels are linked with cancer, different types of cancers. Immune regulation, so regulation of your white blood cells. Blood pressure is also linked with vitamin D, so immune function, bone function, blood pressure, a lot of these different things can be affected by vitamin D, either not enough or too much. Most people have a deficit. Most people do not have enough vitamin D. So vitamin D helps with your guts absorbing enough calcium, getting enough calcium into your small intestine. And if you have enough calcium in your system, then you can keep enough calcium in your bone. If you don't have enough calcium in your system, your bones go, oh, we don't have enough calcium. Let's release some of our calcium into the blood, because calcium is key. You need calcium for thinking, moving, listening, remembering, understanding. So firing neurons, contracting muscles, pretty much everything that you want to do to move and be you need calcium. So when you don't have it, you don't get enough of it in the diet, or you don't get enough vitamin D to help absorb it from the diet in the gut, your bones will start leaching their mineral, their calcium. And they get very porous. You can see this osteoporotic bone, very porous and spongy. The mineral, which is the hard part, is the calcium phosphate, hard like salts, mineral salts. Those get leached. The bone will actually degrade itself and release it to the body and go, here, we need more calcium. We're going to die without calcium. So this is called osteoporosis. This happens, it predominantly affects mostly elderly women or aging women, but it's not to say it can't affect younger women, because there are younger women that are getting osteopenia and osteoporosis, and actually aging men as well, with declines in estrogen and declines in testosterone, and then not getting enough calcium in the diet. Actually, I have a friend who, by the time we were 40, she already had osteoporosis. She said, I hate exercise, I don't like going outside, and I don't eat a lot of calcium. I hate leafy green, I hate vegetables. That's literally, I hate exercise, I hate going outside, and I hate vegetables. Well, guess what? You are just osteoporosis waiting to happen. Because those three factors are what help keep the calcium in your bones, pretty much. So, very important, vitamin D is considered a steroid or a lipid, and we get it from out in the sun. Now, it is an interesting thing about vitamin D. They're pushing vitamin D more now as supplements, and it's in more foods, so you can have different cereals. You'll see the milk, it says supplement or fortified with vitamin D. Cereals, processed stuff, that vitamin D is added to a lot of that because there are vitamin D deficiencies. And actually, vitamin D deficiency can lead to things like in children and kids, like rickets. Have you guys seen that too, where the bones start to demineralize and fall apart and they get bowed and they have a hard time walking? Little tiny babies, little tiny kids, if they don't have enough vitamin D. And this was a big thing in Europe, a big thing in America, and still a big thing in developing and industrializing countries around the world where they have malnutrition and they don't get enough vitamin D and calcium in the diet. And individuals that have more pigmentation, so if you have more melanin, you have darker skin color, darker skin complexion, it's harder to get the vitamin D levels from the UV light, because the UV light has to penetrate through the color, through the melanin, which the melanocytes are in the epidermis of the skin. So it's a little harder to get the UV rays to go through and cleave the reaction that makes the vitamin D. So I've had even now pediatricians try to recommend, because my kids are Mexican American, so they're darker than I am, and they try to prescribe vitamin D. I think I mentioned this to you guys before. We need to get them on vitamin D, you gotta make sure. I said, I'm good, I know the research, we go out in the sunlight, we get enough. The thing is, you have to balance with sunscreen versus natural light. You load up with the sunscreen, you prevent your vitamin D. But you don't wanna get skin cancer, okay? So you got a little bit of light, don't go out and bake from 12 to 2, you know? A little bit of light, UV light is enough. A few minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, that's enough. And if you eat good foods, leafy greens, bless you, And foods that are fortified or added vitamin D to them, like milk, cereals, those types of things, you get enough vitamin D, get plenty of vitamin D. So my doctor, the pediatrician had me for a while. I said, no, we're good. We don't need that. We're doing it right. They're all good. They're fine. They don't have vitamin D deficiency. Their bones are all great. But it is something that, especially in Latina and Latino populations, African American, darker complexion, that's where we're seeing vitamin D levels are actually dropping in some populations, which is associated with bone health. So it's worrisome. Yes.
Why is osteoporosis non-reversible?
Why is it non-reversible? I mean, once the bones start to really lose their mineral density, their bone mineral density, or BMD, it's very hard to get it back. They sort of leach. They have enzymes in them and cells that start to break down the bones. And once they get to a state where they're super, super porous, it's very hard to reverse it. It's just very difficult. They've already eaten away and become so porous and brittle that it's really hard to reverse. It's not to say you can't completely reverse the symptoms and the ongoing osteoporosis from getting worse. So if you exercise, get vitamin D, get enough calcium in your diet, you can slow down or stop the signs of osteopenia, which is the onset of starting to demineralize, or osteoporosis, the full-on osteoporotic bone. So it's not, there are things that you can do, and exercise, diet, calcium, and light, vitamin D, are all ways that you can do that. There was some other thing I was going to say before we did that. Yes, okay, in certain populations, especially darker skinned individuals, vitamin D levels have gone down a little bit, so that's why fortifying things with vitamin D sort of helps to prevent that loss of bone mineral density with not enough vitamin D. Was there a question on that?
Yeah,
Jack?
how do you know, do you just go to the doctors for it, or is there
They can test, yes, they can test for vitamin D. Usually bone mineral scans, so they can do on your hands, and they can look at certain bones and see if you're starting to have any demineralization or loss of bone mineral density. But most people, what they'll do is a workup, like a nutrition workup. What are you eating? What do you do? What are your lifestyle things? Are you physically doing any exercises? So what is your exercise stuff? What is your eating stuff? And what is your lifestyle sort of habits? And do you go out in the sun, or do you always lather up in sunscreen every single time? Do you get a little bit of light? All those little things can give information. It's like your medical history gives information on whether you might be at risk for vitamin D deficiency or not. And diet. If you eat a lot of good leafy greens, a lot of calcium and stuff, a lot of dairy products, like you're going to be fine. You'll be fine with your calcium and your vitamin D levels. Will usually be fine. So it's just something to be aware of. All right. So questions about that? Yes.
How do you are there symptoms? Do you feel it?
Yeah, that's not as clear. That's really not as clear. I mean, for some, yeah, it's not like, oh, if you get real tired and listless and fatigue, you have a lot of fatigue, you might have some of those things, but not everybody does. So it's not like there's a real close correlation with any particular symptomatic factor. What time is it? What time is it?
12:40?
Okay, so we got a few minutes. So I'm going to let you do this. These again are drawing out. That clock is way wrong. I've got to get up there and change it. Compare and contrast dehydration synthesis. You guys already did this, right? So if you did this, turn it in at the end of that row right there. If you've already done it. You can do it at the end of class, just a minute at the end of class. All right, so that was the one I flipped ahead and said I wanted to do that because we're done with fats. We're going on to proteins and nucleic acids. Okay. We're really behind. That's okay. That's fine. There's other things. We have a lot of rooms and buffer and things that we can do another subject material. We are going to have a guest speaker here. I have it on the schedule. It's on Wednesday, as long as everything doesn't fall through. Guest speaker coming from this factory farming coalition, organic farming. Going to talk about the public health benefits and impacts, environmental, public, and women's health issues surrounding things like factory farming. Because we're talking about foods and fats and dairy, and we're going into nutrition and metabolism, I feel like it's kind of good to kind of insert it and see how it goes. I don't know though, I've never heard them speak really. I haven't heard this person, so we're going to see this. It'll be all brand new. So this is all proteins and nucleic acids. So this is the material we're going to go over. I already did recap, forget that. Where proteins are found, what are amino acids, proteins, what are they, protein structure, and nucleic acids. Those are the different components of this lecture series. All right, and then DNA, RNA structure and function. Those are amino acids. And then ATP, the energy molecule. Yes, you guys, there's a whole separate lecture slide, right? So those are fats and carbs. We spent a lot of time on fats and carbs. Now we're going to protein and DNA, RNA. So these are the major macromolecules continuing on. Monomer subunits, those are nucleotides, amino acid sugars. Polymers are like DNA, proteins, polysaccharides. So we've been talking about like the building blocks and then the big giant macromolecules, right? And there are two different types of reactions that make them or break them. Dehydration reaction, hydrolysis reaction. This is all review. I'm skipping over this. Where do you have proteins in the body? Literally everywhere. So when you consume things like nutrients, you take in carbohydrates, lipids, fats, and proteins. Okay? That's really what you're taking in for your body, and then you're building and you're making inside your body. So you have them, structural proteins like collagen, elastin, the things that break down with aging and cause wrinkles. Okay? Bone, skin, tissues, cytoskeletal proteins, that means the proteins inside of your cells. Enzymes, E for enzymes, catalysts of reactions. Enzymes are proteins that speed up reactions and metabolic pathways. Antibodies, these are little tiny protein defenders of your immune system. Your white blood cells will make a lot of antibodies that will bind to and target certain types of other foreign invading proteins. And R, receptors, like I drew on the cell right here, these receptors respond to chemical signals inside and outside of your body. They respond to hormones like testosterone, estrogen, and various stimuli like light, like sweet, salty, temperature, pain. All those receptors, you have types for all those different sensations. C for channels, carriers, transporters. These are what allow substances to enter and exit cells, like I drew right here, like this is an ion channel. It's allowing ions to come in and out of the cell. Your cell has to gate or let certain things in and out. So you need channels, carriers, transporters, all that stuff to get stuff in. Also to get things like sugar in. To get glucose molecules into your cells so you can break them down and metabolize them, we need to get those sugar molecules into the cell. Oh, a good way to remember this is how I remember this. Cirque. Like Cirque du Soleil, but not spelled anything like that. Just Cirque. S-E-A-R-C. These kind of give an acronym for all of the things that proteins make in your body. And also, I should say structural. This includes stuff like muscle, okay? Collagen, elastin, reticular fibers, but also muscle proteins. So all the proteins that make up the bulk of a lot of your body, the muscles, skeletal muscles of your body. S for skeletal muscles, structural proteins. So amino acids, these are the monomers of proteins. All proteins are made of this simple little monomer, an amino acid. An amino because it's got an amino group. In chemistry, there's an amino is just a nitrogen with two hydrogens. And then here it has a carboxyl group, which is a C double bond to an oxygen with an OH. This little yellow structure right there highlighted in yellow, it's called a carboxyl, and it's actually an acid, so you could call it a carboxylic acid. You could just say that's an acid, right? This is basically, it's got an amino group and it's got an acid part where it can donate a hydrogen, because remember, acids donate hydrogens. So it's an amino acid. It's made of nitrogen, carbon, and then it's got this side group, or this R group, okay, that is comprised of different atoms in different amino acids. So it's got the amino group, carbons with the side chain, or this R group, carboxyl group, highlighted in yellow. There's 20 different, or more actually, 20 different amino acids, okay? Each of them have a distinct R group, okay? So some are polar, some are non-polar, some are acidic, they donate hydrogen, some are basic, they grab up hydrogens. So they have different chemical functionalities based on the different amino acids. But they're all building blocks of the proteins of your entire body, okay? So I just want you to reflect on what is polar, what is non-polar. Okay, if I have something that's polar, it's got charge, it likes to go with water, right? If it's non-polar, it doesn't have charge, it doesn't go with water, it turns away from water. Here's a chart showing a bunch of the different amino acids, just a group of them. Some of the non-polar amino acids, some of the electrically charged or acidic, basic amino acids. What you'll notice right away is they all have the same blueprint, exactly the same. NH3CC, NH3CC, NH3, and then they have different side groups. So represented in white are the R group, or the side chain, which can be really simple, a hydrogen, all the way up to really complex and something like tryptophan, this double ring structure with a nitrogen, this big fat ring. That, by the way, is in certain meats like turkey and poultry. guys have heard of tryptophan making you sleepy? They always say that. It's not so true, really. You have to have it in massive quantities for that to be the case. Usually it's just you eat so much freaking food and turkey and stuff that you need a nap. You're just exhausted from, you have that glycemic sort of induced coma. But that is tryptophan, and that's in certain meats like turkey. So we'll look more at that later. So there's a peptide bond that actually links different amino acids together. You've got one amino acid here, another one here. Here's a peptide bond where those two are linked together. How did we connect? How does your body connect the amino acids together? The same way it did the other carbs and fats, the reactions that we already learned. They come in close enough proximity. You've got an OH and an H from the amino group of one and the carboxyl group of another. You have an OH and H, they're close enough together, a water molecule is removed. And you form a peptide bond between those two adjacent amino acids. So now you link them together and you have peptide bonds linking adjacent amino acids. So these three together makes up a little peptide, a polypeptide, or a mini protein. By linking it together by, what's that reaction called? Dehydration synthesis, or dehydration reaction. So you're synthesizing polymers, dehydrating and pulling out of water. Dehydration reaction between two amino acids forms that peptide bond. So now you have the C carbon connected to the nitrogen of the adjacent one, and then the C connected to the nitrogen of the adjacent one, okay? Backbone and side chains make up the polypeptide. When you have 3 or more amino acids, that's what we call a polypeptide, when there's 3 or more. So you can have short little polypeptides your body makes, or you can have big giant proteins. Do you guys have a question? Good? Okay. All right, so polypeptides, 3 or more amino acids, they start to form these long chains. Here's an example of 4. Okay, and they have the OH and the H from the carboxyl, and they're close together. They can make a water, boom, you make a peptide bond. So this is putting 4 of them together with the removal of 3 molecules of water. So in this case, this is how we're building from monomer to polymer. This is what your cells, your body is doing in putting these amino acids together. Proteins are really, really important to have critical functions for all those different things that they do in your body. And their function is dependent on their structure. Another way to say that is their physiology or their function is dependent on their anatomy, how they look, what their overall structure is. So there's a lot of interactions with small molecules. So things like enzymes and their substrates. Here's an example of an enzyme, a ribbon model. Here's a ball of space-filling model. There's a little groove right here. This is a protein that makes up an enzyme, and it has an active site. It's like a Pac-Man mouse, sort of, right there. The active site is where it will fit with another protein or another molecule. So that's a key interaction, a site that has to fit exactly right. It's almost like a puzzle. They have to lock and key fit, otherwise it's not going to be able to carry out its function, its enzymatic function of serving as an enzyme. Other interactions with other proteins, so this is with a small little substrate, like a carbohydrate or a fat or something that it's cleaving or chopping up. But proteins also have interactions with other big proteins. And so examples of that where they have to fit together exactly right are like your white blood cells make lots of antibodies. This is a protein called an antibody, just a representation of one, an antibody. And it actually binds very specifically to, in this case, it's a protein from a flu virus. And those, if you look, it almost looks like little butterflies doing a dance. They fit just perfectly to recognize each other. Your white blood cells making antibodies make these so they can target foreign non-self invaders, and then white blood cells can come and chomp them up and eat them. So they have to fit exactly perfect. The point of that is structure is really critical for function. So if we mess up any of these structures, we mess up the total function of your body. Yes, question, Jackie.
So the ribbon model has to fit with the space filling model?
No, these are 2 different representations of the same enzyme. There's a ribbon model. This is kind of how it depicts the amino acids in space. And this is the ball and stick kind of space filling model, just to show you a different way of how it looks. The active site of the groove is represented right here. And that's the critical part of how it's going to fit with the little substrate, how it's going to turn a reaction or a substrate into something else.
So the one that has to fit is the antibody versus like the virus?
Yes, so like in this case, the antibody has to fit to the exact virus protein that it recognizes. In this case, you can just use this one. This enzyme has to have the specific shape or groove to be able to do this reaction, because it's gonna fit with a small molecule, another small molecule.
Okay.
Those are just two pictures of the same thing, basically. You can look at either one. But
Okay.
yeah.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Okay. Have a good day, you guys, and I will see you on Monday. Come on, if you have any questions. Yeah, make sure you put your application questions up there and grab your card. Or a new card if you need one.
So what is it we have to do for this section? Is it just kind of reading?
Yeah, it's just like 3 questions.
Okay.
It just looks so much longer than like.
It's not that hard.
Because I did the video thing.
That's yours, okay? Is this okay? Thank you.
Well, I liked the video. It just looks so awkward in it.
Same. I literally was like, hey guys, I took a blurry picture.
I know you took a blurry picture, and I was like, okay, Sarah.